The young son of a baseball legend dies at a resort in Costa Rica on vacation with his family. How the son of former Yankee Brett Gardner died is still a mystery, and it could be months until we get answers as to what happened when the team didn't wake up at his luxury resort. We're on the case presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. We have so many questions and so few answers at this point. That is part of the statement from the Gardner family that was posted on the New York Yankees social media pages as they mourn the loss of their 14-year-old son, Miller Gardner. Here's a picture that the team put out on social media of Miller, and here's what we know right now. On Friday, March 21st, Miller didn't wake up while he was on vacation with his family. Miller's dad is Brett Gardner. Now, if you're a baseball fan, you know who he is. He played his entire 14-year career with one of the most high-profile franchises in all of sports, the New York Yankees. He played in the outfield, he wore number 11, and he won a World Series in 2009, then made the All-Star team in 2015 before he retired after the 2021 season. But for as much as he's known for what he did on the baseball diamond and in those New York Yankee pinstripes, Gardner is a dad. Here's a picture of his family on vacation. On the far left is Gardner's oldest son, Hunter, and there next to his dad in the orange is Miller, who passed away. Here's what we know at this point about what might have happened. The Gardner family was staying at the Arenas del Mar. It's a luxury resort that provides easy access to the rainforest and the ocean views in Costa Rica. It sits right on a beachfront, and as you can see here, rooms at this place go for hundreds of dollars, if not more than $1,000 a night. According to ABC News, Miller died on Friday night. The Gardners reportedly felt sick after they came back from having dinner at a restaurant near their resort on Thursday, March 20th. Miller didn't wake up the next morning. Then the hotel says its emergency team was called to respond, which included a doctor. We don't know at this point what caused Miller's death. It's still a mystery. Costa Rican authorities have ruled out asphyxiation as a cause of death. And this is a development in this story because just a day prior, a Costa Rican official told members of the media that they believe that Miller died from asphyxia after a possible intoxication from eating food, but they say that his throat was clear. Now, the authorities are looking into whether Miller had an allergy to any medication that he was given. Right now, we are waiting on the results of toxicology tests as well as for an autopsy, which could take months to come back. It hasn't been conducted as of yet, and ABC News reports that it could take up to 3 months to get an autopsy completed because, like in the United States, there's a major backlog of cases waiting for autopsies in Costa Rica. Part of the reason is the country's high murder rate. Authorities have said there's no sign of foul play in Miller's death. There is one restaurant that the Gardners reportedly visited while on vacation in Costa Rica that's trying to clear its name of any connection to Miller's death. According to Costa Rican media outlet Diario Extra, the Gardners ate dinner at a hotel and restaurant near where they were staying called Hotel La Mariposa and Restaurante La Papillon. Now, here is the restaurant's dinner menu that we found online. The restaurant has more than 4 stars on Google. It bills itself as the best place to eat in the town where the Gardners were staying, combining, quote, spectacular views with delicious food. The hotel, though, is distancing itself from the theory that its food led to Miller's death. In Spanish, it wrote in a statement on social media, quote, in response to erroneous information circulating on social media, we want to clarify that the Gardner family visited our Le Papillon restaurant in the afternoon of Tuesday, March 18th, 2025, 3 days before Miller's unfortunate passing. Now, the hotel that the Gardners were staying at told ABC News that it followed all protocols as soon as it was alerted that Miller was unresponsive, saying that it dispatched a medical team to handle the situation, and also said that hotel protocol does not allow staff members to provide medication to guests. Now, that's a nod to the possibility that authorities are reportedly investigating that Miller ingested some kind of medication that he had an allergic reaction to. We do not know at this point whether that is what happened. I want to take a moment to thank our partners at Upside for sponsoring this episode of On the Case. Upside's a free app that gives you cash back for when you buy daily essentials like gas or groceries. I use Upside every time I fill up my tank. There's a gas station like 4 minutes from my house where I filled up my tank and I got roughly $7 cash back. So here's how it works. Upside, it's free to download. Then you go into the app and you select one of the offers that they have. It could be for a gas station, maybe a convenience store, or just going out to eat. All of those things can give you cash back. You pay like you would with your credit card or your debit card, and then that money shows up in your Upside app. Then you just have to transfer it over to your bank account. So if you want to download Upside, again, you can do it for free. And if you use promo code OTC, that will give you an extra 25 cents back per gallon on the first tank of gas that you fill up using Upside. You can scan this QR code to download Upside or click the link in the description of this video. As for the outpouring of support for the son of a player who is beloved by so many baseball fans, the New York Yankees posted this statement on social media saying, quote, "Our hearts are heavy and the Yankees family is filled with grief after learning of the passing of Miller Gardner. Words feel insignificant and insufficient in trying to describe such an unimaginable loss. It wasn't just Brett who grew up in this organization for more than 17 years. So did his wife Jessica and their two boys, Hunter and Miller. We grieve with Brett, Jessica, Hunter, and their community of family and friends in mourning the loss of Miller, who had a spark in his eyes, an outgoing and feisty personality, and a warm and loving nature. Our love for the Gardner family is unconditional and absolute, and we will offer our enduring support while understanding their desire for privacy at this time. May Miller rest in peace." The Yankees season will officially start on Thursday with opening day at Yankee Stadium in the Bronx. Now, as for the Gardner family, here's what they said in their statement through the New York Yankees social media. Quote, "With heavy hearts, we are saddened to announce the passing of our youngest son, Miller. He was 14 years old and has left us too soon after falling ill, along with several other family members while on vacation. We have so many questions and so few answers at this point, but we do know that he passed away peacefully in his sleep on the morning of Friday, March 21st. Miller was a beloved son and brother, and we cannot yet comprehend our life without his infectious smile. He loved football, baseball, golf, hunting, fishing, his family, and his friends. He lived life to the fullest every single day. We are so thankful to all who have reached out to offer support and encouragement during this difficult time, and we are confident our faith, family, and friends will help us navigate this unimaginable loss. Our prayers go out to Miller's teammates and friends, as well as to all other families who have lost a child far too soon as we share their grief. Please respect our wishes for privacy as we mourn and search for healing." Joining us now is Coroner Nada Rutherford, also a national board certified nurse practitioner. A great person to talk to as we're trying to explore what is just such a sad story and a mystery about this 14-year-old boy who seemed to be so healthy and then passes away in his sleep. From what we've learned thus far about this case, and if you were to, if this was a case you were going to be working, I mean, what are some of the things that stick out to you at this point?
Well, first, Chris, I would like to say that while the father is this amazing baseball great, right now he is a grieving father who has to bury his son, and he can't even bury his son right now because there are so many questions. If I was approaching this case, we're going to look at an autopsy, we're going to look at a toxicology, we're going to look at any chemicals, drugs, substances, poisons that may have been in his system that contributed to his cause of death. We're going to look at histology, looking at the organs and the tissues to see if there's any micro level damage that shows a histamine response, maybe anaphylaxis or inflammation that could be indicative of a very severe allergic reaction. I'd also want to look at neuropathology, looking at the brain and the central nervous system and anything that may be able to tell us. Another portion of this that I think people don't think about outside of the autopsy is the investigative portion that the coroner's office does, or any medical examiner's office. In Costa Rica, we don't know all of the inner workings of their system and how they go about assessing and investigating these deaths. But there are some major questions that I have about the doctor who came to see them. Were there any lab tests run? Did they assess for any electrolyte imbalances? Did they provide IV hydration? The other question that I have is, were anti-diarrheal agents subscribed or prescribed to them at this time? Did the family go and get any anti-diarrheal medications? Because the resort states that their hotel staff is not allowed to provide medications to guests. But did the family go and pick up anything? Did someone else pick up medication and provide that? And if this truly is a case of food poisoning, uh, any healthcare provider will tell you that you want the toxin to be removed from the body. So you don't want to take anti-diarrheal agents initially. Again, we don't know the symptoms of Miller or his family members. I really wish that we had some information regarding those symptoms, because it would tell us a lot. Anytime we're looking at a post-mortem body assessment, it's basically the same rubric that you would follow if someone was coming into the clinic and they were experiencing symptoms that could be related to food poisoning. So I'd want to know the medical history. Was Miller in any way immunocompromised? Was he already sick and this was just the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back for his immune system? What other symptoms did Miller and his family experience after eating at that restaurant? Those investigative questions are going to be very important to this case.
Yeah, and it sticks out to me too, where, and I know now that asphyxiation reportedly has been ruled out as a possibility, that the Costa Rican National Police originally said, that they thought it could have been a food poisoning causing some sort of throat issue, and that has been ruled out. And now they're looking at whether it was medication with an allergic reaction to it. But it seems that the entire family was feeling sick that night. I mean,
Right.
how common is it to have a case where you would have, and we don't know if it was the food they ate, if it was some other circumstance we haven't heard of, but to have a group of people all not feeling well, but then you have one person who is seemingly healthy pass away.
Well, this is why I think it's so important for us to assess the symptoms of the family, and why did Miller experience a fatal reaction after this supposed food poisoning and none of the other family members did. We don't know how sick they were. And so a lot of this, again, is speculation. We're just talking about what it could be. But I'll tell you, as a nurse practitioner who has experience working in the ER, if you came in with symptoms that seemed like food poisoning, I have lots of questions. I want to know, have you had any bloody stools? Have you had any bloody vomit? How much of that have you had? How many times have you gone to the bathroom? What other symptoms are you experiencing? When you think about the fact that he's 14 years old, his immune system is not fully grown yet. So I really want to know the state of Miller's health prior to him becoming sick. Could he have had COVID? Could he have had the flu? We know that if you're already sick with something, getting food poisoning could exacerbate those symptoms. Did he have a severe volume loss other than his other family members who may not have experienced some of the same symptoms that he did? Could he have eaten more of whatever this agent or this toxin was that could potentially be in the food? Again, the investigative portion of this is so important. What food practices do they have? The sanitation practices for the restaurant where they visited. Did he possibly come in contact with non-potable water and drank that, and maybe his other family members did not? Was it in the ice? Like, I would have shut that restaurant down. I would have checked the temperatures of food items that were served, where they were housed, where they were stored. I would look at the sanitation practices and the standards for that particular restaurant. So it goes so far beyond just what is on the autopsy. There's an investigative piece to this that's going to be very vital in determining what happened to Miller.
Yeah, and you hope those steps were taken and quickly, just because time really is of the essence early on in an investigation. You talked about this a little bit at the beginning, and for so many of us, we've never done an autopsy, and we know typically what the end result of an autopsy is, but you're the one who actually does it. What would you see if it was food poisoning? Let's say there was something in the food, and that ended up being what led to his death. What would you be able to see in an autopsy? Where do you look? How do you do that to figure out what that actually would be?
Well, at the autopsy, the technician is going to remove the organs. And so each of those organs is going to be removed from the body cavity, weighed, assessed, and then examined further by the forensic pathologist. But I'll tell you something that's very key in this case for me is what were the contents of the stomach? What was actually in the stomach and the intestines? And can stool cultures or cultures of the items that were found in the stomach be analyzed and assessed for any potential toxins? Blood cultures can be done post mortem, stool cultures can be done post mortem. And so I would want to send those things to the lab for further assessment. This to me is a case that's going to be solved in the lab and not necessarily the autopsy suite.
And then when we talk about toxicology results, because I know those tests are going to be run as well, specifically, what are they looking for when they do that?
So the toxicology is going to look for any drugs, chemicals, substances, or poisons that may have been in the body at the time of death. They can also run the vitreous humor, which is the fluid. It's like a jelly-like clear substance that comes from the eye. And those fluids tend to hold on to things in the body a little bit longer than the peripheral blood. And so they would want to assess those for toxicology as well. And so, what they're looking for is what could possibly be in the system. But the blood cultures and stool cultures are also going to be vital in this case if they ran them.
How likely is it that whether it's the toxicology test or the autopsy eventually when it happens, that will find what the cause of death was?
Unfortunately, the autopsy is only going to provide the anatomy, whether or not the organs were in the right place in the body. It's going to assess the weight of those organs and any visible damage that may be seen by the naked eye. Like I said, this case is going to be solved in a lab, not necessarily the morgue. And so, while the autopsy is helpful in gathering information, it's going to be that microscopic examination of those lung tissues, the tracheal tissues, anything within the bronchial spaces that may give us any indication of anaphylaxis, inflammation, or a histamine response.
One thing that stood out to me, and this is just more of a science question, is he passed away in his sleep peacefully. If it was food poisoning, I think of the times that I've had, food poisoning, and it's not a pleasant experience, and it's a lot of vomiting, and you're feeling very ill. Um, what does him seemingly just going to sleep and not waking up tell you about what eventually the cause could be, or what was going on in his body at the time that he passed?
So, what we know about food poisoning is that, again, it can cause electrolyte imbalances, severe volume loss with fluid loss. And so, if there wasn't any medication or administration of IV fluids that help to set those things right, sometimes people can lose consciousness. And imagine you're feeling ill, you're tired, you're having to get up multiple times, possibly to go to the bathroom or to vomit. And so loss of consciousness could have been mistaken for sleeping.
Hmm. Yeah, it's just so incredibly sad. And part of this too is reportedly it could take several months for the autopsy to be done. I know in the United States we often hear about a backlog of cases that need autopsies. It could be as long as 3 months in Costa Rica. I think for the Gardner family, you want to go home. In these cases,
Right.
do they have to leave? And it's such a morbid, I mean, certainly a morbid conversation, but do they have to leave their sons behind if they were to return to the United States?
Here's the more interesting question, Chris. Because they don't have a death certificate or an exact cause of death, there is an attestation that the agency, the country must provide to transport that body to another country. So if
Hmm.
they cannot attest to this not being an infectious disease, that body may not be able to go home. And that's the heartbreaking part for me as a mom, as the coroner, to not be able to give this son to his parents. He may be stuck in Costa Rica until they can find a cause of death.
And even with that, so you would need to have it. It almost feels like a catch-22 in some ways, where it's you need to have the autopsy to then be able to bring the body back to the United States.
Right. But see, here's the thing, Chris. The autopsy has been performed. What they are waiting on now are the results of all of the
Sure.
testing so that they can complete the autopsy report. Because while the opening of the body and the assessment of the internal structure of the body is a part of the autopsy. A full autopsy includes a study of the tissues, like the histology, the toxicology, and neuropathology that must also be performed. So it's not just that initial examination of the body. They have to wait for all of the pieces of the puzzle. And I will tell you, as a coroner, I was very disheartened to learn that they gave this potential cause of death of
Yeah.
asphyxiation simply because there were trace, elements of vomit, possibly in the nasal passages or the mouth. This to me is the number one mistake you can make as a coroner or anyone investigating a death. Don't give a cause of death until you know for certain. That poor family now has to sit and wonder what happened. And they have so many more questions than answers at this point. And I think it's cruel, honestly, to have given them this asphyxiation as a possible cause of death when they don't know that for certain.
Right, because it started the rumor mill, and I remember when I first heard this story, and it seemed like it was just a real. They were so matter of fact about it that it was just this case where it was food poisoning, and but here we are days later, and it's still kind of unclear what happened. That was leading into my next question about ruling out as asphyxia or choking, really, right, being the cause of death. What would you see as a coroner to be able to rule that out, to know that that wasn't what caused his death?
So typically, if someone is going to die from asphyxiation related to aspiration of stomach contents, you're going to see evidence of that in the lungs. You're going to see that in the respiratory tract along that airway. And so they very clearly stated from the forensic pathologist point of view that there was no macro level abnormalities observed in the respiratory tract. So if he didn't see that, I don't know why they would put out a cause of death that says asphyxiation. When you think about someone choking on food, that's something that the family would have known, and there really wouldn't be a question as to the cause of death. They would have said he was eating, he choked, we could not revive him after he lost consciousness from choking. That could be asphyxiation due to choking, but that is not what they said. All of the family members were sick. All of them experienced some sort of medical duress to the point where they brought in doctors from the hotel, from the resort, to see them on this kind of concierge medical service that they provided. So there are definitely some questions that I have, even for the family. What other symptoms did they have, and how did Miller's symptoms differ from theirs?
And you look at this resort; it was a luxury resort that they were staying at. Brett Gardner, he played for the Yankees for a long time, so I mean, it's a family that has money. In the world of autopsies and coroners and investigations, if they're in this tough situation where the Costa Rican government maybe says we can't get you the results for 3 months, and they're in this spot where they can't bring the body home, is there any sort of like private route a family can take to get an autopsy done privately to then be able to get that death certificate to go home sooner?
There should be the option to have an independent autopsy performed. Now, with that, they would probably have to find someone to fly in, and then will they be able to perform the autopsy at those facilities? Will they have to, rent a space for them to do the autopsy? Will they allow them to perform the autopsy? Because, like anyone else who has a medical license, they must be licensed to practice in a certain area. So, would that independent autopsy actually be allowed to even happen because that doctor may not have privileges there? I would assume that there's more than one forensic pathology in Costa Rica. And so, can they hire someone outside of the facility where they had this particular autopsy? Can they hire someone else to come in? As a parent, I will tell you, as a coroner, I will tell you, if my child died, I would want an independent autopsy because I would be concerned that they may be trying to save face, that they may not want to give me the results right away. I may be able to afford, if I'm Brett Gardner's family, I may be able to afford having the samples sent to an outside lab. Here in America, you can certainly do that. We we promote that for families if they don't necessarily agree with the cause of death. We will send those samples to a lab following the chain of custody. So again, not quite certain about the process in Costa Rica, but that family has a right to seek an independent autopsy.
And this story, I mean, Brett Gardner, just as a dad, I mean, as a parent myself, I mean, you just can't imagine going from what seemed like a great vacation to then dealing with an absolute nightmare. And hopefully, at the very least, they'll be able to get some answers in a timely manner. Coroner Nada Rutherford, thank you for joining us on Law and Crime. We really appreciate your insight.
Thank you so much. And my prayers go out to the Gardner family.
Absolutely. We'll continue to keep a close eye on this story. Again, it could be several months until we get autopsy results back. For On the Case, presented by Law and Crime, I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.